Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar, which is about three postgraduate programs that we deliver here in the School of Agriculture and Food Science at UCD. For those of you who are not aware, UCD is Ireland's largest university with around 38,000 students. The School of Agriculture and Food Science is one of UCD's largest schools and is recognised as a top-performing school with over 80 research and teaching staff. Agricultural science at UCD is ranked first in Ireland, sixth in Europe, and 24th globally. We deliver a broad range of graduate, 14 taught graduate programs and undergraduate programs, and these programs go right across the agriculture and food chain spectrum, including business, environmental science, food science, humanitarian action, and others, three of which we're going to introduce to you in this webinar. So this evening, I will act as chair of this webinar. My name is Jim Kinsella. I'm Professor of Agricultural Extension and Rural Development in the School of Agriculture and Food Science here in UCD. We're going to be hearing from three program directors, namely Monica, Kieran, and Karen, about the programs offered in agricultural extension, animal science, and sustainable agriculture and rural development. You will have the opportunity to submit your questions in the Q&A function of this webinar, and we will get to as many of them as we can at the end of the presentations. So we might start with Associate Professor Monica Gorman and ask you please, Monica, to tell us a little bit about yourself first before you explain your master's programs.
Thanks, Jim, and hello to everybody who has tuned in. I'm Monica Gorman, and I have been here in UCD since 2013, very involved in the programs, the postgraduate programs in agricultural extension. And we have a couple of different offerings, and that in many ways are all leading to the same destination. And I want to very, very briefly give you an overview of what those programs are, and then you can follow up with questions either to myself or to Dr. Tomas Russell if you'd like to get some more detail or find out more about any particular program. So I have one or two slides that I'm going to share here. Hold on. I don't think were you seeing what I was seeing? No? Okay, one moment. And share now again.
This is evidence that we're going live, everybody.
Am I right now? Yeah. Okay. So we have taught master's programs in agricultural extension and innovation, and we also have a research master's degree in agricultural innovation support. Now, overall, they're all gearing graduates towards the same types of career. That's careers in farm advisory work, farm consultancy work, maybe education services, either in the public or the private or the non-governmental sector. So a lot of our graduates from these programs are working in advisory services. Some of them are working in media, some of them are working in government, many of them are working in education. And the focus is very much on equipping you as a graduate with the skills and knowledge to understand more about the processes of learning. And really, it's particularly about how learning impacts on change. And it's about giving you the skills to be effective in building the capacity of farmers to adopt new practices and technology and to adapt to an ever-changing environment. So as I said, we have four options. The first one that is up there is we have a one-year taught master's program based here in the UCD campus. It's two trimesters of modules and a minor thesis. So the minor thesis, we have opportunities for placements with different organizations. So you wouldn't necessarily be on campus while doing your thesis. The focus of that program or the modules that you take, there's an anchor module on agricultural extension. There's modules on understanding the family farm business. There's modules on behavior change, and there are a variety of options that you can also take. The second Options B and C are master's programs that we run in conjunction with Teagasc. And Teagasc is it was the main public provider of agricultural advisory and education services in the country. The first one is a taught master's program over 2 years, where the student is on placement either in an advisory office or an agricultural college for the full time, but they will change. 1 year will be spent in one office or college, and the second year will be spent in a different advisory office or college, under the guidance of a mentor and taking modules online that are related to the work experience that you're getting in the advisory work office or the agricultural college. That program also involves a minor thesis. The second program that we have with Teagasc is a research master's. And this is one where topics for a research master's are put forward by people working in advisory services or education services in Teagasc. And again, a lot of this program is spent through a placement. For this one, the student spends the first semester in UCD taking modules here, and then goes to the advisory office or the agricultural college to conduct the research, but also to get exposure and experience of what advisory work or education work is like. So programs B and C very much linked to Teagasc and very much giving you a lot of exposure and experience while studying for your masters. And then the fourth option is a part-time distance learning program. So that's for people who are already working in either advisory services or education or consulting services or agribusiness. And they can take the masters over 2 years. Again, a lot of the modules are linked to the types of work that you would be doing. And Mockra SkillNet does provide partial funding opportunities for this program. So that's a very rough overview, and you can come back with questions later. But if you take a note there of my email address and Tomas Russell's email address, we will be able to help you and guide you if you want to know more about either of these programs. So back to you, Jim.
That's great. Thanks, Monica. And just to remind people that if they do have any questions during this session, they can include them in the Q&A. Okay, so next we'll move on to Associate Professor Kieran Meade. So Kieran, over to you.
Great, thanks, Jim. Just going to share my screen here now, 1 second. Okay, hopefully that looks okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kieran Meade. I'm originally a graduate from animal science in UCD. And then I trained as an immunologist, so I teach how the immune system works and particularly interested in animal health across multiple species. So I'm also the director for this new MSc program in animal science. So I began my work in UCD in 2020, and the first steps involved in launching this new MSc was to do a stakeholder survey. And that stakeholder survey was to identify what the skills that future animal scientists will need. And the aim of the MSc, therefore, is built on a lot of industry support to try and develop those competencies in the areas that are critical to basically provide people with the depth of knowledge and the skill sets to occupy leadership positions within the animal science sector. So UCD has a lot to offer. You've probably heard about UCD has a global reputation in agriculture. And one of the strengths of our MSc in animal science is that you have global leaders in their subject areas teaching you in very many of the disciplines. I illustrate some of them on the slide there, like Pat Lonigan, for example, but also Barbara Murphy in the equine area. And these researchers are, in the main, very closely linked to industry. So, you know, you're getting taught by the best individuals across what is a 12-month full-time program. So really what we're doing with this MSc is we're responding to the needs of students for flexible learning options. So there are a lot of challenges with accommodation and the cost of living in the city, for example. So this MSc is an online option, which, you know, can work really well for some people. And we have full-time but also part-time options. In fact, we have multiple different pathway options. And what that means is you can decide to do a certificate in animal science for a smaller number of credits, extend that to a diploma in animal science, or go on for the full 90 credits and do a master's in animal science. So entry requirements are a level 8 degree in a relevant discipline. So, it's hard to be more specific than that. We have people coming in from a veterinary background. We have people coming in from an animal science or an animal and crop production background, and people from a more general science background as well. So really the MSc is to allow the academics to teach their subject that they're interested in to a deeper level. So it's advanced animal science. And you can see this reflected in the board that's been held up on the slide there, that we have advanced animal reproduction, for example. We have advanced animal nutrition, sustainable livestock systems. I teach infection immunology and One Health. We have animal genomics and quantitative genetics and global food systems. So we have a whole suite of additional modules as well, including a new module just released this year on animal welfare, for example. So as I mentioned, really what the online MSc enables you to do is to have flexible learning options. Most of the lectures are delivered asynchronously, so you can download the lectures in your own time. So and then engage in evening tutorials to benefit from peer learning and to meet the subject expert. So that usually suits people who are working or who have family commitments, and that means the online format suits them. Final point, I suppose, really to make at this stage is just that from the stakeholder survey that we did, a lot of the feedback we got was that what graduates of the future need are transferable skills, such as critical thinking skills, data analysis skills, and communication skills. So we have a lot of modules that aim to deliver those learning outcomes. And for that, we also bring in external experts like business development consultants, for example, or communications experts who feed into the MSc program. So you'll see there a picture of one of our students who was sponsored by the Irish Guild of Agricultural Journalists, for example, and that Guild of Journalists sponsor a prize for the best student in our communications class. So it's very deeply embedded with industry participation, and that's the basic overview of the MSc. I'm happy to take any additional questions, and my email is on the slide there, kieranmeade@ucd.ie. I'm happy to follow up with any of you offline as well. Okay, Jim.
That's great. Thanks, Kieran. We'll be joined now by our third program director, Associate Professor Kieran Keaveny. So Kieran, handing over to you to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and about your programs.
Thanks. Can you see I hope you're seeing what I want you to see there. Great. Thanks a million. My name is Kieran Keaveny. I've been in UCD now for over 10 years, and I recently took up the role as Program Director of Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Development Masters. This programme has been running for over 25 years in UCD in different forms, and has a long history within the school, where we've seen graduates go to work in local development, international development, and across the board, from the public and private sector. In terms of the programs, the master's program broadly, we very much are focused on working with communities to address rural and agricultural change. We have a very strong ethos that centres around a place-based approach, which is very much looking at rural places and the challenges and opportunities that exist in those places. And when we say we have a bottom-up ethos, it's very much about engaging with the people, communities, and farmers that live and work in those places. And really anybody who's interested and does the Masters is very passionate about empowering rural communities to respond to challenges that are occurring in rural areas. To a large degree, the Masters is very focused on policy formulation, strong evidence for decision-making in rural areas, and the implementations of those policies for sustainable agriculture and rural development. So if you're thinking about doing this program, if the next slide will come up, if you're thinking about it, I suppose for us, our graduates come from a really, really wide background. So In some ways, there is no, we will consider any degree or any sort of background. The key for us is that you have a passion and interest for rural places and rural sustainability. You must have second-class honours in your degree, but that degree could be from sciences, from agriculture, from social sciences, arts, humanities, and background and business. And that's actually, I think, what makes our programme quite unique, because we get people from all over the world, from Ireland, from Europe, and from many, many different qualifications and backgrounds. And the learning that goes on amongst the students itself is really fascinating. So if you feel you possibly haven't studied agriculture or haven't studied rural issues, but you have an interest in those areas, this possibly is a programme for you. So if you do consider doing the programme, there's a number of different routes. You can do the master's full-time, part-time, and also for some people who are already working, they may be interested in doing our programme from a continuing professional development point of view and potentially doing a certificate or a diploma in the area. We've designed the master's now so that you can specialise within an area that suits you or where you want to see your career going. So what we find is some students may have a stronger interest in agriculture, and others may have a stronger interest in rural community development. And so you can select your optional modules to tailor the master's for your own interests. And of course, with your thesis and your research project towards the end of the master's, we always advise students to either link it to somewhere you're working already, somewhere where you maybe have experience, or where you want to see your career going. So it means that we've quite a lot of variety in terms of the specialisms and focuses that the students actually take up in their programme. Our graduates work, as I said, in a broad areas. They've tended to work in the agri-food sector, in local, rural and local community development, in local government, in civil service, perhaps in policy making, and also in international development. So I just want to highlight some of the modules here, just to give a bit of a flavour as to what we do. So as I said, you can take different routes in the programme. So the full-time route, I suppose, is the traditional way of doing the master's. It's done over 12 months. Within that, I've listed the core modules here. And again, if you want any more detail, please feel free to contact me about that. But you can also do the master's part-time, which will be over 24 months. And within that, as I said earlier, you can specialise in potentially taking an option that's more focused on agricultural innovation, or potentially taking a master's that's focused on community building and placemaking. Another area, if you maybe feel a master's isn't the right route for you, is to actually build on your other qualifications and experience, and potentially look at taking a graduate certificate or a graduate diploma route, which again can be done over 1 or 2 years. An issue for us is, given the focus of the master's is rural, a lot of our students come from rural areas, and the master's is designed that if you're taking a part-time route, you're on campus 1 day a week. But if you're here full-time, there's core modules taught on key days. So it is possible to perhaps live at some distance from the university, as a lot of our students do. And to tailor that even more, we've introduced some online optional modules, because we understand some of the challenges around that. So I'm happy to talk more, and obviously please contact me. My contact details are there, and welcome any questions. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Karen. I'm just looking to the Q&A, Georgina. I don't see any questions. Is that right?
I don't see any have come in.
Okay.
yet.
Okay. People are a little bit shy, maybe. I think what we've had is, just a taster of the 3 areas of programs that are offered at UCD. And maybe I might ask a question, which I think, Karen, you touched on, but maybe I just pose this question to Monica and Kieran. Typically, what types of careers do people get into after they've successfully completed your master's programs? Maybe Kieran, you might deal with that first, and then back to Monica.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, so it's hard to say exactly at the moment. We're still in the early stages of this MSc, but next week, for example, we have 20 people graduating from the MSc. But a lot of our students are already based in employment, and they might be working with Glanbia, for example, or some of the milk processors, and they want to upskill and specialize in a particular area. And that might help with promotion within their current job, or they might be looking to move jobs in the future. From some of the students that have graduated already, I know a couple of examples where people have gone on to do PhDs, and other people have gone on to take roles in the Department of Agriculture, and one also in Teagasc, which is the National Irish Agricultural Authority. So it's really quite a broad spectrum. And you know, we're thinking that these graduates would really occupy, as I said, leadership positions both in pharmaceutical companies, in animal nutrition companies, but also in with government and with regulatory bodies as well. So you know, I don't know if that helps, but it's quite a broad spectrum.
No, I think it would. I know if I was tuning in as you know, someone looking at potentially postgraduate studies, it's great to hear that there's a very broad range of opportunities, you know, following on from such qualification. Monica, from the suite of programs you explained.
Similarly, but I would say we would have approximately, you know, maybe a third are working in farm advisory services, a third working in agricultural education, and 1/3 working in a variety of other areas. Like we have a lot of people in the Department of Agriculture. We have people working in private sector, in agribusiness, in agri companies, and we have a couple of our graduates are working in international development and have left Ireland and gone to further afield. But one thing that's very important for anybody considering our programs in agricultural extension is if you do want to work in advisory services, and particularly in roles where you have to be registered with the Department of Agriculture's Farm Advisory Service, it is important that you have a primary degree, a level 8 degree in agricultural science. People are very welcome into our programs who don't have a level 8 degree in agricultural science, but the master's is not a substitute for it when it comes to actually getting registered with the Department of Agriculture.
Okay, thanks, Monica. In the meantime, we've had a number of questions in, and one which I think is relevant to all the programs is in relation to the application open and closing dates. So do you want to comment on that? Maybe starting with yourself, Monica, and then working back to Kieran and then Karen.
Yeah, for our full-time program and for the part-time program, they're open applications. You can apply at this point for those, and up until probably up until about July next year, you can still continue to apply for those. For the Teagasc programs, we advertise those in April with a closing date in May. So watch our website and watch the Teagasc websites for those programs being advertised. They operate on, they're competitive in terms of who gets in. There's an interview process, there's a selection process, so they are advertised separately.
Okay, thanks, Monica. Kieran, on the animal science program.
Yeah, so we have 2 intakes. We have the autumn intake and we have the spring intake. So you can so we close. We don't have a hard and fast rule, but we tend to close for applications really a month prior to the start date. So we're looking at early December for the January intake and early August for the September intake. So yeah, that's what it is currently.
Thanks, Kieran. And Karen, for the MSARD program.
Yeah, we just have a September intake, and its applications are open now, and they'll close early August, similar to Kieran, about a month before the intake.
Okay, and Karen, while you're still there, you'll notice that there's a question in relation to the MSARD program, and this person is just wondering if it's possible to tailor research assignments to the broader context, very much considering the urban and rural community question. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think sometimes it's not all about rural. All these issues are affecting urban and rural. I'm delighted to get the question, because I suppose generally I'd say yes. Now, when it comes to assignments, they're obviously tied to modules, and they will have module specific requirements. But very much the final research project, which is worth a third of your degree, is very much tailored by the student to suit your own background and your own interests.